Meet PHD Jungelios, the world's #1 expert in jungle Aphelios, able to reach master with just this pick, taking an AD carry and moving it into a role that's all about early game influence, but shockingly it works, with Aphelios being a strangely good early skirmisher, then scaling super well into the usual late game carry that Aphelios always is. But to get there, our player had to invent the most complex jungle clear I've ever seen, involving specific gun rotation, purposefully wasting ammo to swap guns and help with his full clear, all while staying on full health. But this wouldn't be an off-meta pick without a weird build, able to go for this full damage meta build and carry games, but our player also loves this Radiant Virtue second item build that makes him into a health gaining tank, perfect for games where he doesn't need to be the main carry. We want to make it clear this pick is not OP or even that good, but that's why it's so interesting, that a pick can be bad and still be made to work well enough to reach a high rank. With the season ending soon, if you're planning to make a last minute dash to a new rank, perhaps using an off-meta pick, then give yourself the gift of Mobilytics, the ultimate all-in-one desktop companion for League of Legends and our sponsor, and best of all, it's completely free, importing the best build and runes into your client in Champ Select, so you can spend more time preparing your game plan. Mobilytics will also keep track of vital in-game stats for you, like letting you time summoner spells and giving you jungle timers, so you can focus on team fights. I love this app, it's a huge improvement from anything I've used in the past, and I highly recommend you download it for free and hit the end of season rank that you really want. Back to our player, PHD Jungelios, real name Genoa, and his story of off-meta began way back in Season 1, finding the game and immediately trying out new strategies, from AP Tryndamere to AD Kassadin, which is part of the reason why he was stuck in Bronze at the time. Over the years he kept testing, but his first success was in Season 7, where he played 100 games of XERATH Jungle, and made a popular Reddit post about it. He reached Diamond 3 with this pick, which is honestly ridiculous since XERATH struggles even in his main role, let alone playing it in the jungle. But this climb taught him a very important lesson, that sure, you can play a better champion that can clear faster or gank better, but once you're in the game, you can't swap champions, you have to work with what you have. This really helped with his mental in-game, as he was never tilting. He said it also made him very good at being in denial, refusing to accept that XERATH was a bad jungler and just instead completely ignoring it, focusing only on having fun and making it work no matter what. Ultimately learning that personal skill is way more important than picking the meta or what role you play it in, something which Dyrus was a big fan of. So with the new item releases in Season 11, which now feels like quite a long time ago, he thought it would be the perfect time to learn another new pick that made no sense. He became obsessed with Aphelios, playing him AD carry, but it really was a bit too easy, reaching high elo with no problem, and becoming one of the best Aphelios one-tricks in the whole world. By Season 13 he was sick of the role, and even began demoting since he wasn't having fun. He said he watched a lot of our videos and became inspired by others finding a pick that sounded terrible, but often worked better than expected. This pick for him was Aphelios Jungle. Its purpose? To get him out of bot lane so he could still play his favourite champion without having to pull his hair out every game from stress and watching his support int. Expecting to maybe just about hit Diamond 4, he created a new account, naming it after Jungle Aphelios to show his teammates he meant business. He started playing and even he couldn't believe how well it was going. By November this year he hit Master with only Aphelios Jungle, turning this scaling AD carry into a high early game impact pick, without having to rely on a support. For him, this pick was never about hitting a high rank. It was really about finding a way to have the most fun possible with his favourite champion. AD carry Aphelios is still way better, but playing it in the jungle to him is much more fun. So why is Aphelios Jungle good? Or at least playable? Well, the #1 thing our player loves about it is that he doesn't have to play bot lane anymore, so he can really impact the game early on, and not have to rely on a duo. But that's not all, as in the jungle, Aphelios is way better at gun management, able to swap out the weak guns faster thanks to the camps, and having blue buff so he can spam his abilities. In the jungle, he always has something to auto-attack to swap his guns before an important objective, whereas in bot lane you always only have a very limited amount of minions you can hit. As well as this, instead of farming bot lane for 15 minutes just to scale up, Aphelios Jungle can get involved in the action way earlier, letting him be the difference for his laners early on, getting teammates ahead and stopping enemy assassins from getting fed. Sure, Aphelios is weak to invades, but he's just as weak to getting camped in bot lane, as the champion's so immobile, so it's really not that different. But this pick really all comes down to whether he can clear the jungle, and luckily this player has spent months perfecting him this new special clear path. Immediately it's unexpected as he starts red buff without a leash. He does this as in high elo often teammates don't want a leash, as they're able to get a huge advantage in lane by avoiding it, so he wanted to invent a path that didn't require it, starting on the red buff with his red gun, kiting it out of the pit, then to the side and then back towards Krugs, smiting at the end, also keeping his health topped up with the lifesteal. He takes fleet footwork to help with this, but also to give him the speed to help with the kiting, as this speed buff works just as well when you hit monsters. Onto Krugs he uses the green Q at long range to start it, and then red Q, kiting them from one side to the other, focusing the big one. Our player has a very tiny adjustment for skill order at this time, taking 1 point in W for early attack speed to help with his clear, and this just makes his kiting even better. From there he maxes Q as normal for the AD. Once his Q cooldowns come back, he uses both again on the big Krug, finishing it off with one final green Q, and then using the red one for the speed boost to get towards raptors. This gives him his first gun swap to get purple, autoing the large raptor and using the purple Q, then using green Q again to get another new gun, the blue one, perfect for AoE damage to this camp. This is why the ability usage is so vital for this clear. He gets this gun right in time for this camp, using the Q for the AoE splash damage. Onto wolves, again he uses the blue gun for the AoE, and the purple Q for extra damage, finishing it with purple. Onto blue buff, he wants to use all of his purple gun ammo, rotating to the white gun. He's able to use the blue gun to get a stack of the white gun shuriken, so he can auto attack for the extra damage. He watches this stack on his HUD to see when it's about to run out, and before it does he swaps to red, using the red Q to refresh the shuriken duration and add more, swapping back to the white gun for the highest damage. And on Gromp he uses white again for the DPS, only swapping to red to get the Q stacks, finishing off his clear. Well, his clear is done, but his gun rotation is quite awful for ganks, so his gun management continues, spamming his red Q to get rid of it as soon as possible, and using the white gun turrets to try and spot the enemy jungler, as well as just to cycle through it. So in this game he really spams them to immediately give him green gun and purple, the perfect gank combo for a long range route, ideally walking into the lane with the purple gun to auto attack and slow the enemy, chasing them down and rooting them when he needs to catch them, also able to use the green long range Q to set up the route, which will then let him get in range with the purple one to slow. But really just walking at an enemy using the purple gun is great CC, slowing by 30% with each auto attack, and applying it continuously to prevent the enemy from getting away. You can see he's not terrified of fighting. Aphelios is a pretty good early game damage dealer in the right situations, especially chasing someone down, or at close range with his white gun stacked up. His early DPS is something enemies can't ignore, but let's not forget, Aphelios Jungle is still at his weakest point, so his next base he buys recurve bow or ideally noon quiver, and heads right back to Krugs. With this base he again wants to rotate his guns, ideally getting the blue gun back for the AoE camps. So while he's running back from base he's spamming the green Q the whole time, so by the time he reaches raptors, his blue gun AoE damage is ready, and from this point jungle clearing is smooth sailing, no longer worrying about guns, as his champion is strong enough to be played normally. So now on to his first strategy. There's an early power spike in the game for Aphelios, where you can take any objective quickly by yourself. If you get noon quiver as well as red and white guns, you can easily sneak the dragon even if you're playing AD carry. However, on jungle it's much easier having the smite to secure it, and you don't have to worry about the bot lane wave, so it can be a free, really unexpected dragon. From here his ganks are all about how he uses the guns in each situation. If he's ganking a lane where his teammates already have a lot of CC but they don't have much damage, then red and white guns are fine and they might be necessary for him to get the kill. However, if he's ganking a low CC lane, that's where the green and purple guns provide all of the CC, even able to use the purple ult as a CC setup for the gank, as he knows he's not the only one able to deal damage. A great thing with this gun combo is that he's such long range he can slow and set up a stun with low risk and just outrange people. The enemy just gets kited and Aphelios is never even reachable. Some of this might sound quite difficult as this player is an expert at planning, but he also just loves trying to figure out how to help in a situation where he has bad weapons, like here where he enters a gank with the Q speed, then using the short range gun for damage when the enemy is close, but when they dash away he swaps to the green gun to extend the range, securing the kill with the green ult, finding the exact combo that's needed for that moment. But he's not just planning his guns, he's also planning his build. This player loves swapping depending on the game, even to a mainly tanky build with Jack Show or Radiant Virtue second item. Radiant is especially interesting on Aphelios, able to use it to bait enemies in, with the health gain from this item as well as his red ultimate, then building into shield bow, he can fully tank enemies who dive onto him, healing back up and letting his team turn the fight around. He goes for this build in games where he already has a ton of damage on his team and doesn't need to be the main damage dealer, partially fixing any squishy team comps that his team ends up with. One rare tip for Aphelios Jungle on Rift Herald Herald is that if you hit the Herald's eye with the red Q, it will reopen almost instantly. He's not sure if this is a small bug, or if it's due to the cooldown being decreased by auto attacks, but either way it's incredibly useful for a fast Herald take. If you combo it with the white gun DPS and attack speed, and the fact that every time a champion basic attacks her, the eye cooldown is decreased by 2.5 seconds, these white gun auto attacks will reset the eye cooldown quicker as well, making Aphelios literally the fastest Herald taker in the whole game, which is exactly the kind of niche thing you love that you only discover when you try and make a champion work in a new role. He made it very clear that even in the jungle, gun rotation is vital, having the ideal gun rotation of green, purple, blue, red and white to ensure he gets the best combos together, and the way to get this is by using red first, then green, then purple, then blue, then red again, and then white. He empties each gun in that order to maintain the rotation. It's a little minigame he plays in his brain throughout the game while he's doing everything else. In teamfights, Aphelios Jungle is rarely the only carry on his team, so he can focus on providing more utility, able to go for more purple routes and just trying to set up picks. He doesn't always have to get the perfect guns to kill everyone like an AD carry would aim to do. Aphelios isn't just a damage dealer, and this role really shows the other stuff he can do. Whether he's alive and dealing damage, or just baiting enemies in and doing his best to survive, he'll always be doing something useful, even if that's just making space for his other carries to win the fight. It isn't so much of a disaster if Aphelios does die. It's still pretty bad, but not as bad as AD carry, as his team will still have multiple carries left. So if he deals lots of damage but he dies, they can still win the fight and get a Baron. It's a double-edged sword of having too many carries, but sometimes that is useful. We can't forget he's playing a marksman jungle, so it's reasonably likely that your team comp is not always going to be great. This pick isn't perfect for every situation, but that's why he enjoys the challenge. I think we often forget that League is not meant to be completely solved, or even easy. It's just meant to be fun, and so even in the losses, he's enjoying his time trying to outplay people. Our player says that going jungle Aphelios isn't really good, but it's better than playing AD carry, so he hopes everyone watches this video knowing it's not about viability, but the desperate emotions bot laners feel wanting to play their champion, but not their role. I'd say it's not free LP, it's not overpowered, and it's not really even strong, but it is playable, and since he is playing a marksman, his scaling is always going to be great. So if he gets a lead, Aphelios can always carry the game, so this pick clearly does have some strong parts. The bad matchups for this pick are things like Rammus, Rengar, Kha'Zix or Lee Sin. Rammus is definitely the worst, but he's very uncommon, so he often bans Briar as she's so strong, or Yasuo as the win will counters his double AD carry team comp. For his full build he starts the green jungle item for safety, pretty much giving Aphelios a second overheal which is really useful, rushing recurve bow or noon quiver and always going Kraken first item, then buying boots, steel caps or mercury treads most games, or berserker greaves against lots of tanks. From here he can pivot, going collector into Gale Force, IE or Yumu's, this is the most common build, and great against low armor, or he can go Lord Dominik's or Mortal Reminder into Gale Force or Infinity Edge against lots of tanks, or finally the tank build, going Jack Show or Radiant Virtue into Shield Bow, best if he already has a fed AD carry to play with, letting Aphelios focus on baiting enemies. For his room page he has 3 different options for 3 skill levels, starting with this fleet page for beginners, then once you improve on the clear he'd swap to press the attack, and for the higher skill players he'd recommend removing the safe secondaries, in favour for even more damage to be more proactive in games. But just so you know, he often plays with the easy page himself, so I don't know if I'd risk either of these other ones. Rather than promoting himself, our player would love to recommend 2 Aphelios streamers, Hidden Forever on NA and 30 Day Neen on EU West, both who refuse to give up their champion regardless of how bad he may become in solo queue, and have a huge amount of knowledge to share. Links in the description. Thank you so much for an amazing Season 13, I can't wait to see what off-meta looks like next year in Season 14 with the new map. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out Mobilytics desktop app, our sponsor as well. Link in the description to help you hit your end of season target.